Write I. You write S here. Now you write H. And now you write A. And we've got Isha.
The first time I wrote my name, I was sitting in a humid Chennai apartment, armed with a sketch pen and the confidence only a toddler can possess. I wrote it on an old book. The A was upside down, the S was backwards, but in all of its imperfect glory, it was mine. My first memory of creation. Sounds perfect, doesn't it? A cute story about a cute kid. But that's not really what happened. In reality, I was dragged to that table, kicking and screaming. The sketch pen was forced into my hand, and I tore the book out of spite because I didn't want to write my name. But it's a better story if I did, and that's the point. Now, my real story, and I promise you this one is true, begins not in Chennai, but halfway across the world in South Harrow, London. I was 4, the only Indian girl in a class of 30 British children. I experienced what no child should have to at that age: exclusion. My accent and language didn't match the rest, and try as I might, it felt like no one was understanding what I was trying to say. But I had books, magical worlds, and wonderful characters that I could escape to. So at 5, I wrote my first book. 10 sentences on taped up A4 sheets. Ugly, clumsy, and embarrassing in hindsight. But the main character of that book was a princess inspired by my favorite cartoon, Sophia the First. Her magic power was that she could speak fluent English. It made perfect sense to me. If you couldn't belong in real life, then maybe you could rewrite a version of it where you did. So I wrote more and more, creating series upon series of these characters. And the more I escaped into them, the less I knew who I was outside them. At 7, when I came back to India, it felt like nothing had changed. Once again, the odd piece out of 35 identical ones. Both my characters and my methods changed. No longer writing stories, I now typed them about these girls named Sara and Indu. Girls who were completely boring, but they had one magic power. They could speak fluent Hindi. They were truly Indian, and once again, my characters fit in better than I ever could. Over time, Sara and Indu became Isha, but not the awkward bookworm I really was. She was flawless. She never fumbled, she never failed. She had friends, grades, and confidence. She was everything I wasn't, but desperately needed to be. And by 8th grade, I think I was. I'd arrived. Teachers praised me, classmates admired me. I belonged. It felt like the stories I spent my whole childhood writing had cracked open and spilled into real life. But I didn't think that I'd earned that life. I thought I'd written it into existence. That my stories were the one thing keeping me in orbit. I'd fixate on a character and try to match my life to theirs. From my routines to the way I walked to the way I talked, everything was constantly being edited. Obsession isn't always madness. Sometimes it's just control. Okay, let's play a quick game of 2 truths and 1 lie. Number 1, real life is nothing like a storybook. Number 2, people don't always act or react the way that you want them to. And number 3, you can make those people act, react the way that you want them to if you imagine it hard enough. Yeah. So the last one's a lie. But back then, I believed in that with everything I had. Because in my mind, my stories were absolute reality. I expected people to behave like characters I controlled 24/7. And when they didn't, I'd get confused. I'd act like a mean comment I'd made had never been said. Because if I said something but edited it out in my story, that basically means it didn't happen, right? But my friends noticed. Cracks formed. And I started becoming a stranger at the lunch table. To their credit, they tried, gently and often, to get through to me, to tell me that I was chasing an unattainable, inauthentic version of myself. But I didn't listen, because I had a bigger problem. I couldn't write. Somewhere between all of this noise with my friends and I, writer's block crept in, and I didn't even notice it until it was everywhere. Nothing I wrote made sense anymore. I'd stare at blank pages for hours and feel like a fraud. My stories were once my safety net, and now they mocked me. Not being able to write felt like someone had bound my hands and feet and thrown me into cold, dark water. I could only lash out blindly and hope that somehow I surfaced. Someone had to be blamed for this. I was the author, who was perfect and thus above blame. But my friends, they were side characters. Their feelings didn't matter. So I blamed them. I lashed out at them, said cruel, unforgivable things. One friend was childish, another pretentious, and suddenly these girls, who had been by my side for everything, were the villains of my story. Because I needed them to be wrong, so I could stay right. When the rush faded, devastation hit. I needed to fix what I'd done. So I did the only thing I knew how. I wrote. It was a letter begging my friends for one chance. They read it, passed it around, and slid it back. And I thought everything was okay, because in the books, the friend group always makes up after a fight. So the next day, when I walked up to their table, smiling and happy, they looked at me like someone they didn't even know. One of them got up, took me by the shoulders, and took me to a corner of that classroom. And I remember exactly what she told me. Isha, maybe it's better if you sit somewhere else. My hands were cold, my voice was stuck in my throat. And for the first time in 13 years, I had nothing to say. No angry rant, no smart comeback, no witty comebacks, nothing. I had no words. And just like that, I was out of the story. Theirs and mine. See, I thought lashing out would save me, pull me out of that cold, dark water I was sinking in. But all it did was sink me deeper. Clearly, that problem hadn't been external. There was no one left to blame but myself. I assumed everyone around me existed to serve my narrative, serve my plot. That people didn't exist beyond the characters that I chose to show. But when those characters were out of my story, I realized something. I was never in love with the stories. I loved the people that were in them. See, a building needs structure. My stories needed characters. And I realized far too late that I needed my friends. Every story I reread now reminds me of how much I based it off our time together. The silly moments, the inside jokes, the genuine connections. My entire belief system uprooted, I was forced to question everything about my life, about my actions, and above all, the role I was letting my stories play in controlling me. So I challenged myself. No talking, only watching. And if you're my friend, you know how hard that is for me to do. For months, I said almost nothing. I just watched people go about their day, talk, smile, interact, laugh, cry, and I would say nothing. I'd only ask myself, what's happening to them? What's going on in their heads? And every time, the same answer would hit me like a truck. I had no idea. Absolutely none. It could have been a breakup. It could have been a dying pet. It could have been a fight at home. It could have been something worse. But their story was real, even if I had no control over it. They were the product of 100 different tangled threads in that one singular moment. And I'd never even thought of it that way. And I've never looked at people the same way again. So, I found two things, even though I only went looking for one. Life surprises you like that sometimes. The first was that stories are not isolated and linear, the way that I always thought they were. They're tangled threads, intersections of tens, thousands of lives in that single moment. And the second was Sonder. Sonder is the moment you look at someone and recognize that they're not just some blurry extra in the background of your life, but a full person living out the full scope of their own. Look at the person sitting next to you tonight. They didn't just show up to fill a seat. They started their day in some way. Maybe they spilled coffee on the shirt that they wanted to wear tonight, and that outfit you really, really like is just the first thing they found in frustration. These two things are what my stories had needed from the very beginning. Much like my name, written in sketch pen a dozen times before I got it right, my stories contain my identity within them. The difference is now I acknowledge that there's so many people who've made me into who I am today and who I want to be for them tomorrow. I try my best to write with the intent of honoring everything that I experience, the good, the bad, all of it, to make sure my story represents my life to the fullest. Because this story, unfinished and imperfect and messy, is mine. It's built from all these people I've loved, the things we've faced together, the things that, yes, I've caused them to face. And if I could tell my younger self one thing tonight, it would be this: that this is your story. And if you're gonna spend your whole life hating it, then you're dishonoring every thread that's tangled with yours to bring this moment to life to you. I mean, look around. Come on, look at your life. There's magic here. There's wonder. And as Jordan Peterson once tweeted, there are cathedrals everywhere for those with eyes to see. So I'm not gonna stop you from dreaming of that life. No. Dream of that life. Write your story. But when you're done, put that pen down, go out there, and live it. Thank you.